And I just want to start by just saying thank you to Preely. Preely are the ones that are organizing this event and are actually making us be here today. And if you do not know what Preely is all about, it's a self-service platform streamlining user engagement and feedback through easy recruitment and user panel management. So you can efficiently recruit users to build your user panel. And once the users are part of your panel, you can select target groups where you can share tests, survey invitations, all to stay connected and communicate, all for getting valuable insights and enhancing product decision making. So if you're interested to hear more about Preely, you can go to the website and sign up and get a demo, or just reach out to either Klaus or Steppe, who are some of the great people at Preely. And for those of you who do not know me, I am Helena Levison. I call myself the Queen of UX because I'm actively working on raising the industry standard of UX by making talented people like Kate and Julia share their insights so that they can inspire you guys, wherever you are in the world, to be better and do better UX work. And that is in the broad term of UX, and today we're obviously talking more about research, which I think is such a fascinating field. But without further ado, I'll just leave it to Kate and Julia. In the bottom of the Zoom, you can find the share screen button, and then you can share your presentation, and let's get cracking.
Great. I'll share my screen. Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you for that intro, Helena, and thank you, Preely, for inviting us. Greetings, everyone. Thank you for your time today. I'm Julia. I'm a research ops specialist. I am living in New York City.
And I'm Kate. Thank you again for welcoming us and that beautiful introduction. I'm Kate. I'm a design researcher and I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And just to intro you to our talk today, it's about how and when to action on feedback using triangulation. And why does this matter? Because as researchers, as professionals, we're often faced with customer feedback coming in from many different channels in many different formats. And it's so important to leverage this resource in the right way. So we want to help you do that.
For today's agenda, we'll cover the problem we're trying to solve for, which is feedback analysis. Then we'll share a definition of triangulation, introduce our template, summarize our learnings, and then take any questions. I hope that sounds good to everyone.
Nice. So we'll get started with a little more about Julia and me. We've both worked as research ops specialists and as researchers.
I used to be a researcher, but now I'm in ops.
And I used to be in ops, but now I'm actually a researcher myself. And Julia and I really understand the challenges of managing feedback with customers and when to action. And so we're really eager to share what we've learned so that you can find your own solutions too, using these two perspectives.
So that said, just a quick note, this work is based solely on our own experiences and not affiliated with or represent any companies we've been associated with. This content is original.
So let's get into it. Having access to customer feedback is valuable, but it is overwhelming to process. Teams often struggle to manage multiple channels, which can cause friction for both employees and customers. This creates a downstream domino effect. And so next, we want to explain what this domino effect is and what it looks like.
The problem starts with the sheer amount of feedback we receive from different perspectives. Since customer feedback is coming from all over the place, it's like trying to make sense of a messy drawer. It's hard to know where to start. For example, you might notice that sales teams share customer feedback for new features. Support and researchers share feedback on usability issues. And executives share feedback on what clients, buyers want to buy. Without a way to compare apples to apples, it's easy for teams to get stuck, leading to analysis paralysis. The risk is missing key customer insights.
So true. And the problem here is that we have to action on it somehow. Why is that? Because not following through on customer feedback at all hurts business. It damages the user experience, and over time, it can cause customer churn too. You might look at your company's renewal and retention metrics as a symptom of poor experience, as a lagging indicator. Follow through, on the other hand, builds trust by showing that we value the feedback coming to us and that we care about creating a product that's valuable for our customers.
Another risk is employee compassion fatigue. When there's no action or acknowledgement on customer feedback, customer-facing teams pay the price. For example, the relationship between the tech support rep and the customer gets damaged. Because the employee sees no action being taken on the feedback they're reporting on, the employee may feel unheard, unvalued, and disempowered to help their customers. To solve this, customer-facing teams need a platform to share customer feedback and to start the conversation with product teams. Incidentally, as a side note, customer support teams are 2 times more likely to resign from companies more than any other role. Employee churn is part of that domino effect.
So, given these risks, how do we make sure to take action on the right things and not everything, so we don't end up with a Franken product like this Franken pizza? Thinking back to our junk drawer metaphor, how can we organize that junk drawer of customer feedback so that we can use it as it's intended, which is as a springboard for action?
We like to show you a research strategy you can use to look at customer feedback with an eye for action.
First, we want to talk about triangulation, what it means and why it's important. Triangulation is about improving your understanding of something by combining findings from multiple research methods or diversifying your collection and interpretation of data. Nielsen Norman has a very helpful video about triangulation that we'll link to at the end of our deck. Here, the takeaway we want to show you is that someone is holding 2 bricks. They might seem identical, but they're actually different in size and weight. Recognizing these differences helps you to see the complete picture from all perspectives.
So, what does it mean to triangulate? One example would be collecting data about the same problem from 3 different data sources to ensure more valid and reliable understanding. This slide shows the different types of data you can consider. Usage data, which is what people are doing, you can get this from clickstream analysis, for example. Observation data, which is why people are doing what they're doing, you can get this from usability testing or field studies. And conversation data, which is what people are self-reporting, for example, to sales, tech support, or social media. That generally is the most data that we get at companies, the conversation data.
And here's another type of triangulation. So let's say you don't have access to feedback from different data sources. You can also consult subject matter experts to ensure more valid and reliable understanding of the problem or opportunity. For example, engage customer-facing teams to understand the user's perspective, engineers for technical feasibility, and business analysts or product managers for the business value. These three perspectives can improve our understanding and validate priorities. Seeking alternative viewpoints like this is triangulation in action. The key takeaway here is that this framework is flexible and adaptable to a variety of different scenarios to verify information.
What happens when we do not triangulate at all? Here's a classic example. In 2009, a retail giant in the US, Walmart, sent out a survey asking if customers wanted them to clean up their store aisles. Customers said yes. Walmart then proceeded to declutter their stores and reduce their inventory by 15%. They took survey data at face value and did not triangulate or validate or invalidate findings. What happened next?
What happened next? 1.85 billion in lost sales. Think about that number. Oh my goodness. They
That's a lot.
inadvertently removed popular items and variety from store shelves, causing frustration among shoppers. So how could they have possibly avoided this?
Walmart actions on only one type of feedback, a survey, conversation data, attitudinal data. If they had gotten feedback from different collection methods, Walmart would have understood what customers wanted more holistically. For example, after the survey, they might have conducted a small pilot study to gather usage data. Then they could have conducted usability testing to validate or invalidate their direction. Using all three would have helped them see the full picture of customer needs.
Yeah, absolutely. So now let's get into our how-to. Now that we understand the value of triangulation, the rule of three is our framework that you can put into action today to make sense of all the customer feedback coming in so that you can start the process towards actioning with your team. The rule of three refers to the 3 points of a triangle. So now let's walk you through it.
So here's the rule of three. This method is flexible. You might need to adjust it based on your resources and your company. What's great is that it can also be done asynchronously if needed.
Perfect. And we created a template to show you how you might put these steps in action. We'll share a link afterwards, but feel free to, when you do get that link, make a copy for yourself. And I just want to give you a little preview here. So I'm going to pop over to the spreadsheet. Tab 0 has some instructions for putting this framework in action from me and Julia. Tab 1 is a customer feedback log. Tab 2 has a priorities rubric, and tab 3 has an experiments list. So now we're going to walk you through it one by one in our presentation. And remember, we'll share a link to this template so you have it for later. So let's get into the walkthrough. But first, a scenario. So imagine that you're a researcher or a product manager and you have a feedback problem. There's so much coming in. How would you approach this so that you can take action? We want you to start with step 1. In tab 1 of our spreadsheet template, as you can see here, capture all of your data points in a list, and then collect data about that same problem from different data sources and list where you found it on the right.
Step 2 is when you use and apply the rule of three. When you have feedback from 3 sources of data saying the same thing, you have a validated customer problem to solve for. As shown here, 3 sources have been confirmed for the top 5 customer issues. That means the customer issue is real, it's validated, and important.
Next, in the second tab of our template, gather your team to score the customer issues. This is our step 3. We're using a ranking from 1 to 5, but you can easily adapt this to whatever point system your company uses. And one helpful tip, you might incorporate this into your team's regular backlog grooming ritual so that you can make decisions without needing to add another meeting to the calendar.
Step 4 is where the rule of 3 comes into play again. If 3 cross-functional teams all score the customer issue high enough or easy enough, as it might be for the engineers, it'll get ranked close to the number 5 at the top of the list and should be actioned on. Basically, this is just stack ranking, but having 3 subject matter experts weigh in.
Once you have those prioritized items, you can begin solutioning iteratively. Move those items into tab 3 of our spreadsheet and begin looking at solutions to test. As an alternative, you could also move these items onto your roadmap or wherever you're tracking work with your company. Then start to test and learn or experiment on solutions with the confidence that you've at least pinpointed the best places to put your resources for further investigation.
Confidence, that's really key here.
Absolutely. And now let's work through some scenarios together as practice.
Okay, so imagine, this will be difficult because of
The animations.
cat thing. Yeah. Okay, so imagine executives on your team, in your company, have requested that you prioritize customer feedback to identify top items for the roadmap. You have access to a busy Slack channel filled with feedback from customer-facing teams all over the place. How do you action on this information? So true or false, you should gather feedback in a document and tag by data source.
And just think to yourself for a moment, what would you choose, true or false? Should I move on to the next one, Julia?
Yes.
Okay.
True. Logging feedback is the first step so that internal teams feel heard. You're tracking the feedback and you're making it visible. So there's a lot of transparency there, which is also building that trusting relationship with your colleagues. Use our spreadsheet as a template.
Awesome. And then I'll do scenario 2. So imagine AI is all the rage these days. Your company has created an internal ChatGPT instance. And you've used ChatGPT to summarize thousands of tickets. ChatGPT finds that there are some themes. We're going to label them X, Y, and Z. True or false? You should start working on theme X, Y, and or Z. And think to yourself for a moment, is this true or false?
This is a very relevant topic now that we have AI to help us thematize things.
Absolutely. And the answer for us is false. And why is that? Because X, Y, and Z are still only one type of data source. Gotcha. Customer support tickets are self-reported. So that means that they're conversations or attitudinal data. And we should still be validating these themes with existing behavioral data and or analytical methods. And here's a disclaimer. Not everybody has access to those additional data sources, This is a perfect scenario where you have access to everything. We recommend that you always aim for 3 sources, but know that you may only be able to find 2, and that's okay. Just know the risks and do what you can. That's all we can ask of anyone. Just do the best that you can.
Yeah, it's all about risk tolerance.
Yeah.
So to summarize our learnings, we've learned the power of applying the rule of 3 to tame the chaos of feedback. Just like organizing a messy sock drawer, triangulating customer feedback brings clarity and focus to our efforts. So as we wrap up, remember the formula. 1, first, collect all your customer feedback in one place. Next, search for information about the problem across 3 data sources. Then stack rank across departments to prioritize. And finally, experiment on solutions. This method is flexible, but guided by best practices. You can adjust it based on your resources and company context. You might even be able to do some of this asynchronously. So consider this framework as a starting point for discussions.
Right. Love that. So let's talk about the ultimate outcomes that we're going for using this process. And that's that everyone has a voice. Internal teams have a voice. They bring customer feedback and have confidence that it'll be listened to. Customers have a voice, same thing. They know that they'll be listened to. And as a result, the user experience improves. Isn't that what we all want? And there's feedback loop closure. It really boils down to trust when we close these customer feedback loops. And we want to end with an inspiring quote from a company doing innovative product development. In Miro's 2024 report, they say for any team to build a truly beloved product, collecting and analyzing user feedback is key. We hope that you've taken away some concrete strategies to bring your company closer to this ideal. We hope that our template will get you halfway there. And finally, we hope that you have a new appreciation for the shape of a triangle and what it can do for you. Thank you everyone for attending, and a big thank you to all of the people who contributed to this talk and enabled us. Thank you.
Yes.
Yay!
Thank you, Helena. Thank you, Preely and Klaus. We'd love to take any questions.
Yes, and for you guys that are watching, please go to the Q&A session if you have questions. Miko has actually raised the hand, so I'm going to allow you to talk so you can talk directly. Miko.
Hi. How are
Hi.
you?
Hi.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Miko.
It's a very interesting thing what you are talking about.
I'm glad
you
you
have a
found it
question?
interesting.
Yes, I have a question. Do you have some question idea of IIE, how it's working on this plan for you?
Can you say more about that?
Yes, because I'm thinking the IA is taking. I have seen that many companies are using this IE this moment, but what the effects would be if the all are using IE?
Oh,
Yeah, that actually was one of our case studies or our exercises. The second one, which was using artificial intelligence, AI,
Yes.
in research. you still have to know where the AI is collecting the data, the sources of data that it's trying to synthesize. So in our example, it was, you can use ChatGPT to summarize a whole thousands of customer support tickets, but it's still not validated themes that that results from ChatGPT, because you're still getting it from one source, which is customer support tickets. It's only attitudinal. It's usually, the people who can articulate their problems. So they're usually more of the early adopters, or, the expert, users. You still have to triangulate, which means like getting that problem from observation data, having AI also thematize all that observation data as well, and then matching, are those themes similar? And even better is if ChatGPT also takes analytical methods from, heuristic reviews, QA assurance teams, secondary research, competitive reviews, and summarizes all of that information as well. And if ChatGPT and AI is able to see the same themes in all three of those types of sources of data, then yes, it is a validated, important issue. And that's where AI comes into play. It's great that it can do all the synthesis, but you still have to know what is it that it's synthesizing, the source, the data source.
Okay. Can I ask one more question?
Yes, please do.
Okay. Are you now a person, or are you computer?
I'm sorry, say that one more time, Nico.
Are you person or computer?
Oh, Julia's the computer. I'm real. So just so you know.
Right, Julia.
Yeah, I was going to say, I am a computer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mika.
It's going to be very interesting to see in the future, like all these AIs being developed more and more to do these type of research things. I think we're going to see, even just watching like image AIs, how they have moved in just 6 months or even a year, right? It's incredible how much smarter and better it's become. Cool.
I just want to say, it's still, AI still needs the human context. So for example, I always have a picture of ice cream and pickles together as like the favorite dessert. And so we know, because we know the context, that ice cream and pickles do not belong together, but an AI generated image of like the favorite dessert for New Yorkers and gives us this image, only we can understand the context. Similarly, with this AI summary of all the data, we're the only ones who could say, wait a second, where are the sources of data? And does it make sense that these themes are, from these data, from different data sources, and there's importance to it. There's validity.
But I think that's in general, like when you talk about data, that data itself can be manipulated very easily, right? So we need to always be very, very critical about what we pull out of data to make sure that the responses that we get are actually correct. Now, we have another raised hand from Elitsa, and I'm going to enable you to talk now. So ask your question.
Hi.
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 Oh, I hear you very, very bad, actually, since I started talking. I don't know why. Do you hear me well?
Yes.
Sound good to me.
Okay. So nice to meet you. And I have a question that actually precedes the topic of what tools to use in research. And I don't know if you could answer that, but I think you're pretty knowledgeable about research and all that. So I would ask how to convince clients that they actually need research, because I, as you, believe that research is the basis of any good product, but they, like, I would say 95% of clients don't care.
Mm.
They just go by, okay, I want that. I've been having this product for, let's say, 3 years. It's working. And what I want from you is to change this and this and that, for example. And when you say that you need research, they say, no, you don't need that thing.
Mm. I think that's something we're all very familiar with, the pushback on research. And Julia, I will let you answer the question from your perspective if you like, but for me, it's helping the client or whoever is your stakeholder understand the business implications of the research. How is it going to de-risk? How might you have more opportunities? How might it take away opportunities if you don't do the research? And so interpreting or seeing it through a different perspective and sharing the business impact is where I've seen the most value, especially if you can talk in dollars and cents. And I think when you are a researcher and you understand the problem space so in-depthly, and you're really an expert as you're planning your research or you're thinking about what you need, just being able to interpret it and kind of speak the language of the stakeholder and understand what they are really focused on can do wonders for the convincing. It's not a cure-all. It's not going to speak to every person, but that's the approach I would take. What do you think, Julia?
Love it. Love it. Not even saying the word research, like in our spreadsheet, instead of saying rapid research, we say rapid experimentation. So it's like taking what you're learning and saying, okay, you don't want to do research, that's okay, but let's just do a pilot test. You know, that's very logical, is like taking the solution and just doing a small little run of it to see what happens and collecting data that way without even calling it research. Calling it, you know, a beta or alpha or whatever. And also, you know, research is basically de-risking, and the four de-risking that has to be done is, you know, you have to just make sure there's value, it's viable for the business, it's feasible, and it's also usable. Those are the four risks that Marty Kagan usually always talks about. And so when you talk with customers, I think sometimes they just respond better when you're saying, oh, we just want to de-risk,
Okay.
blah. Hopefully that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. Yes,
I
I
You're
love-
think,
welcome.
Elisa, do you want to say something more?
yeah, I just wanted to say that I've seen that talking about, well, we're talking here about de-risking, but I would say it bluntly, talking about saving money for the client is the thing they listen mostly to.
Mm-hmm.
And when you say that, it seems like you're kind of validating my hypothesis that I should really bring to the table what they're spending and what they are earning. Is that correct?
I would say
Definitely.
absolutely. The understanding what they care most about is key to the convincing. If you can show them how what you want to do, whether you call it research, whether you call it an experimentation, will move them closer to their goal or farther away from the pain that they feel as business owners or as your clients, that's the sweet spot where you're going to have the best chance to convince them. And use your research skills. Like the presentations that you can make as a researcher are so powerful, especially when they really speak to the audience. This is a great chance to shine, I think.
Yeah, and like going back to Walmart, they could probably be very similar to your client. They just want to roll steam roll ahead, but they just collected survey information, and maybe your client is only thinking about their internal attitudes because they're subject matter experts. That's still great and accepted, but also like saying, you know, before we put a 5-year plan in, you know, decluttering the aisles, let's run a small little pilot study on 2 or 3 stores before we go all out and clean up all of the Walmart stores. You know, that could have helped Walmart not lose $1.85 billion.
And that's great, Julia. The element of storytelling can be so powerful here too. Find those examples that really speak to your clients to help them see.
Julia and Kate, do you have some sources of places that you have seen these stories? And because I do think it's like this argumentation, and you need some ammo almost. I can personally recommend the UX Team of One by Leah Bewley, which is a book she wrote where she also comes with examples to how you need to argue to, do things because you are the only researcher or like the only UXer in the team. Do you have any sources that you'd like to recommend?
Personally, I love to read the business pages of any newspaper, the technology pages, just to keep a watch on what's happening in the industries I care about. And usually if there's a story that looks as if it might have some threads to pull on, it's really easy to dive deeper and find out what happened. I mean, without actually being part of those companies, you can usually go down some rabbit holes. That's how I like to investigate. But Julia, how do you find your stories and articles and inspiration?
I I like listening to Tomer Sharon. And Tomer Sharon actually has a nice way. He's a researcher who used to work at Google, WeWork, Goldman Sachs. And the way he talks to stakeholders is very interesting. He'll always say yes. And so, for example, you know, how many participants should we have on a study, or, you know, how many respondents? Our stakeholders always want like a huge amount of people. And his response would be, yes, we can interview 50 people. Let's do 10 at a time. And I want to make sure, though, that you attend all those 10 sessions. And so that's a nice way of saying, yeah, we'll do 50, but let's do 10 first, attend all of them, and then we'll do another 10 until we reach 50. But what he's probably getting at is that the stakeholder will see the pattern after 10 interviews and will probably say, oh, we don't need to hear another 10. It's just going to be repetitive. So I like that kind of, yes, we'll do that. And can you also do blah?
That sounds like a luxury problem where they're like, interview 50, like, no, we can settle with 10. No,
Yes.
we have a question in the comments from Mariah, but since I know Mariah, I'm assuming that Mariah, would you like to unmute yourself and ask the question directly?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Mariah, yes.
Thank
Welcome.
you for taking me off mute. So my question is, how do you handle validating outliers or extremes outside of the standard customer feedback for all to be seen and heard in the ideas and concerns that they may have?
When you say outliers and extremes, what comes to mind about that?
So typically, like just thinking out loud here, a lot of the feedback that you might get when it comes to negative feedback, they're going to be really loud, and you know that's going to be coming from like Yelp reviews, say, but maybe only one person had this extreme negative experience and they're wanting to be heard, and so they might share that on Yelp, for example. How would you go about making sure that they feel seen and heard in their idea and concern by utilizing this triangulation feedback loop?
Oh, I have a perspective that it almost doesn't need this triangulation. I feel like if you have one really loud person with a terrible experience, that needs to be directly handled with that person. and then the lessons learned with the team to figure out, like, operationally, where did it go wrong and what can you do to fix that process. So I see it more as like a process issue than something that would need like triangulation and prioritization, experimentation. I think the only way I would say differently is if I knew that there was a similar problem happening that I had seen from a different area, right? Like if I had seen 3 different data sources saying the same thing, or if I had heard in an all hands that there was a problem that kind of linked back to it, then I might use this process. But for me, it seems very operational and like something that needs to be handled with that person specifically.
Yeah, it does sound like it needs like that personal attention, because you know, brand detractors do make a difference, and they do want to be heard. They want a platform. If there's a chance though to understand what happened, and like having that person you know, be interviewed and understand what was it that went wrong, what was the step before that, what was the step before that, and almost understand the root cause of what went wrong, because that might be important to know if other people are experiencing the same thing but are not able to articulate it. So this one person was able to, you know, find a channel to complain, but understanding what the root cause was is important, so that, you know, you could look at usage data, you could look at other data sources to see if it's happening to other people as well. That's one thing. If it's a negative outlier, if something is going on and you need to do that root cause analysis and seeing how real that problem is. But there are some cases, when I originally read your question, I thought, oh, maybe it's about like these early adopters, these outliers who are doing something that other people are not able to do, but they're able to find value for your product or feature. And so how you want to do the same thing, which is like, what did you do in order to get to that aha moment? And what did you do before that? And what did you do before that? And that, so you're doing this backwards kind of journey. And then you want to push more of the users to doing the same thing with good interaction design, with good, you know, in-app prompting. So those are both cases where you want to understand the root cause, and then you know, taking it from there. But, you know, as Kate was mentioning, you know, I think it still needs that personal customer support, customer service, you know, interaction to help try to turn the table around, so that even though it was a bad outcome, the experience of dealing with the company is still good.
Right, and I worked customer support early in my career, especially on forums and in chats and on Twitter. And I found talking to customers with problems that oftentimes it wasn't even about the product. And so a little bit of initial curiosity about like, what happened? What are you looking for? It might find that there's just nothing really there beyond just general frustration, which can happen.
Yeah.
Mariah,
Thank
do you feel like your question was answered?
Yeah, and it's actually given me a lot of ideas too, with another idea that just kind of popped up while you were talking was in relation to, say, Trustpilot, that they really tend to engage with people who are giving negative feedback and immediately responding and trying to get to that the point where, you know, things took a turn. So yes, thank you so much for answering that.
Thank you, Mariah, for asking this question. And I'm gonna allow myself to ask a question as well, and I hope you don't mind, because I I've been kind of poking at you, Julia, when we had our initial conversation about this. And it's these things, I've had some people who couldn't get into user research, and then they took as a customer support job instead to try to see if they can like get their way in through there. And definitely heard a lot of frustration with like trying to bring these things that they were constantly hearing and bringing that to the researchers, and researchers just being, or designers that are acting as researchers as well, right? People just being very exhausted and not having the, yeah, the ability to actually solve these problems. So one thing is like, how can you, as an overworked researcher, kind of like give some kind of solace to the people who are working in customer care, saying we are actually not, it's not that we don't care. This is what we're trying to do to make sure that we can act on it, so that they are like, perhaps stop getting on your back because they know, okay, it's being dealt with. And not only the customer support people, but also the clients who are reporting things or coming with suggestions, or which I know is only one source of data, but again, making sure that they feel heard. And just to put on top of this very large question, should you actually write to customers when you start working on something that they have submitted, or is that too much to expect?
For the first part of your question, I think that like having that platform to start the discussion is basically what we're advocating with this framework, which is like, do it in backlog grooming, do it, in the beginning, you might need to like really have a synchronous meeting to say, hey, we should be tracking and logging customer feedback in this centralized location. Someone has to start, whether or not it be customer support. That would be nice if customer support can just put a whole spreadsheet of the top themes or issues and help start the conversation that way. And actually, I think researchers would probably really appreciate that kind of spreadsheet list of issues. And together with someone from the cross-functional team, start that kind of tagging process. You're basically classifying the feedback. And then that way you can, figure out like, how do we want to stack rank it, these issues, if we know that these are real issues, both the researchers are observing it and the customer support teams are getting that as major themes in tickets, then almost like on a silver platter, give it to the product manager and say, hey, we both corroborate these are the top 5 issues, like ranking it in advance, and then having the product manager and engineers think through, the 2x2 matrix of feasibility and value. But there were other parts of your question I don't think that I answered.
Yeah, so how do you, when you have users or clients that give you feedback and come with suggestions, or like say, this is missing, should you, because I think we've all kind of had that experience if we've complained or like said, this is not good enough or something. And then they're like, yeah, we have noted it down now, and it's gonna go in our backlog. And you're just like, yeah, sure thing. Like there's just like so little trust that anything is ever happening based on that. And I think also I've tried myself at least to do research with people who are like, we would love to hear what actually comes from the research that you've done with me. And then I'm just asking, how much do you think you should actually spend time and energy and basically money, because like Ivica said, so it's clients, sometimes it's clients' money, to get back to these people and tell them that what they have inputted actually was acted on.
A scalable process is some sort of automated way that a comment gets updated in Salesforce, which is generally like the Salesforce is the single source of truth where, you know, customers are discussing things are being logged, but then the end step would be after the research or after the validation or invalidation, there should be a note next to that customer feedback, and the customer facing teams will get notified through Salesforce or whatever to respond back to the customer. Kate actually did something great in Salesforce at one of the companies we worked for, where she had that tagging process that was automated. You know, it goes from the sales teams to the research teams back to the sales teams that way. But that automation would be ideal. Kate, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I do. It's a really tricky problem because it involves so many people and so many perspectives. And are we ready to share about the roadmap? Are we not ready to share? Do we tell somebody that we listened and here's what's going to happen, but we didn't follow up in the same way with somebody else? And I think this is where that face-to-face relationship is so important, especially with sales teams. Anybody kind of pre-sales and then like post-sales, like the customer enablement people, like you just need to be in lockstep with them about what's going on so that they can craft the best messaging for that client. Something I learned working with Julia and in our conversations with customer success, customer facing teams, is the amount of time and energy they put into building relationships. They will spend years sometimes understanding a core group of stakeholders at a company. What are their pains? What are their sensitivities? What do they really want? And so when it comes to communicating about the product, yes, we could say, oh, we have this, we've taken our note and we'll look at it later. But is that going to resonate with them? Probably not. That's why I like to leave it in the hands of people who have the relationship to begin with, to make sure that those people are informed first and foremost. So I worry less about the communication with the customer and more about my communication with the customer facing teams to make sure they have what they need. And that could be as simple as, we've done this research study, your clients were part of it, please come to the readout. Please see what we did from it, so that even if there's no direct action in the product, they can go back to their clients and say, we just really wanted to tell you that we found some of these themes and your feedback made a real impression on our team in these ways, so that the impact is felt even if there's not a visible result from it. I think what I am kind of wanting to share is that, you know, from the last question about the squeaky wheel, you know, with a really bad experience, even my experiences in customer support where there's really angry people, most people just want to know that they're being listened to. And that's really what we're trying to share here too, is that feedback loop and closing it builds trust. And if we can do that within our own teams, I think the positive domino effect is that the feedback loop gets closed elsewhere that creates trust. And so as long as we know that there's forward momentum and that we're being listened to and that we're working on the problems to the best of our ability, like that's the first step for me to getting to that action.
Perfect.
Awesome.
We have another question. I'm just going to read it here. If you were at a company with no structure for using feedback efficiently or even collecting feedback, what would you prioritize doing first to get things started?
Just operationally, my first order of business would be just finding out where feedback is being tracked. Where is it coming through? And just getting a real dialed in handle on what those sources are. Because before you can start to organize anything, you first have to capture it. And if you don't know where it's coming from or where to look for it, you're hosed from the beginning. So I would say look for where it's coming from as a very, very first step. And then once you do find those streams, figure out a way to use this template. It's gold, and you can adapt it to your own needs. all of the drop downs that we have under the different types of data can be edited to reflect your own types of data. So that's what I would recommend, just putting on my operations hat. But Julia, what do you think from the research perspective?
You said the first thing that I thought of, but also, doing interviews with those internal teams that are getting the feedback to see how they're doing it, how their source is, how are they observing, are they talking to people, are they getting clients reports, and even trying to go to, if there's a research repository or a place where research reports are being held, do a literature review and start grabbing 5 key, issues from each one of those studies and start the process of adding them to a spreadsheet. That might start the conversations, because you're talking their language. You're going to the people who did do some sort of research, and then you're putting all their insights in one common area. And then you're circulating it and saying, hey, this is what I heard and read from your report. Is this right? Oh, okay. Who else can I talk with at this company who might have another perspective? And then it's just like that runaway train where you keep adding on to that spreadsheet.
I love this idea of even if you just have customer support questions, of just being able to say, okay, here's the top 5 problems that they're seeing. Is there ways that we can do that through conversations, observations, and look at what do we already have, or how can we make some small little things to examine this? Now, the last question for today is Miko, who raised his hand again. So take it away. If you're not shy now. Otherwise, I would just like to say thank you so much, Julia and Kate. It's been super insightful, at least in my opinion. And for you guys watching in, if you think this was good and you want to share it with some people, later on it will be posted on Preely's website so that other people can rewatch this session, or you can rewatch it. And we'll make sure that the link to that spreadsheet that you've created is being shared, because I think that is a great place for people to start, to just, even if they don't want to create a direct copy, they can build their own in Notion or whatever. So thank you guys so much for making that and sharing that with the people today.
Helena, can I just put it in as an answer here in the Q&A, the link?
Yeah. Let's do that.
Okay.
So if people want to get it, then you can go in and copy paste it directly here. And I think that Klaus is going to be sending out an email to people who participated, and then he can obviously also put it in there. And yeah, again, thank you so much for your time. And
I'll send it here. Did that go? In the chat Q&A? No.
Well, we'll get it out to everybody regardless. Sounds like we're
good. We'll make sure that you guys get it. But thank you so much for your time and making this awesome presentation. And thank you for everyone who checked in and was part of this today. And stay safe wherever you are, and see you around. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.